Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 194 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what is going on with you, brother?
I was thinking about changing my name.
Which one, your real name or Gibby?
My real name.
Okay. To what, Gibby?
Rex West.
To Gibby Gibberson?
Go to
Gibby Gibson?
Let's go Rex West and just call me Rexy.
See, I don't think that rolls off the tongue like Gibby does.
Yeah.
Gibby just is so easy to say.
All right. I'll stay with it
I think
another year.
I think you maintain your stage name as Rex West.
Yeah.
But as far as podcasting goes,
We leave it right where it's
I
at.
think we got to leave it, man.
All right. Well, hey, I'm doing good, man.
Yeah, me too. 2021.
Yeah.
For me, every year, I always have trouble writing and saying that the new year,
Yeah.
in the early part of January.
Sure.
2021, I have had no problem.
You can't wait
Saying
with
it.
that.
Because I think like a lot of people, yeah, you're right. I couldn't wait to get out of 2020. I was
Yeah.
so tired of saying 2020. There was a lot of undesirable things that happened in 2020. Now, we still have some things that are going on even in 2021 that
Right.
are rough.
Sure.
We're not out of the COVID situation. There's some other things boiling,
A
but
little bit.
we're positive
We are.
about this year. And I know we've got some great episodes this weekend. We've got a lot of great stuff lined up for this year. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah. This is the year that you are supposed to get my name tattooed on you.
I must have missed that bet.
I thought I won that bet.
Yeah, I don't remember that bet is what I'm saying.
You were probably drinking.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
So speaking of good episodes, we have an episode out right now on TCAT. We're talking about William Dean Christensen. This is kind of a wild episode. We're talking about a serial rapist, a serial killer, but a guy who was all over the kind of East Coast of the United States, up into Canada, murdered a lot of people, was only convicted of, a few murders, but is thought to possibly be in the 20 to 30 range.
Easily, I think.
He was a bad guy.
Yeah.
For sure. Before we get into this episode of Unsolved, we have some new Patreon shout outs. So let's give those. We had S. Contreras,
Hey, Contreras.
Brittany McDonald,
What's going on, McDonald?
Megan Berry,
Hey, Megan.
Ada Coco.
Hey, don't be eating no cocos.
Now that's just fun to say.
It is fun to say.
Danaka Arnold,
Ooh, that's even more fun to say. Tanaka.
Farrah Yarwood,
Hey, Farrah.
Danish Chic,
Well, if you're going to be chic, be Danish. Or Danish.
Danish, Vicky Jansen,
What's going on, Vicky?
Sabrina Duschel,
Hey, Sabrina.
Stephanie Nicole,
What's going on, Stephanie?
Ron Snell,
Hey, Snell.
Shay Roach,
What's going on, Shay?
Cameron Squires,
Hey, Squires.
Amy Wilkerson,
What's going on, Amy?
Darla Luke,
Hey, Darla.
Casey Prentice,
Hey, Casey.
David
Well,
Sorber,
thank you, David.
Shelley,
Well, good old Shelley.
Joe Haddock,
I'll just go with Joe.
Allison Markovich,
Hey, Allison.
Jensen Lansall,
Hey, Lansall.
Jamie Lee,
Well, appreciate that, Jamie.
and Lisa Marshall.
Oh, mashallah.
So a lot of great new support. We appreciate that.
We do.
And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Kanya Allen. So we appreciate that long-term support as well.
We really do. Thank you, Kanye.
We had some great PayPal donations from Geraldine Jensen,
Hey, Geraldine.
Angie Stevenson,
Thank you, Angie.
Kathleen Martin,
Well, thank you, Kathleen.
and Stephen Kessler.
Hey, appreciate that, Stephen.
So definitely appreciate that. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I really am.
This is an episode about a couple who fell in love during World War II when a man named Kenneth Cheetham, a young British soldier stationed in Africa, met a young American woman named Iva LaRue Ransom, who was from a small Idaho town. Gibbs, the two wrote letters back and forth and eventually married on Christmas Eve in 1954 and settled in the town of Bonnie Lake, Washington.
kind of like the story already. You know, the fact that write letters back and forth before the internet, before all that stuff came along, when you really had to take your time and have good penmanship.
Well, and you also had to have something to say.
Well, that's true too.
You know, if I look at my daughter's communication now,
Right.
even with her boyfriend,
Yeah.
it's like, sup,
Yeah.
nothing. All right.
That's it.
I mean, they'll have a whole conversation. It'll be like 4 words long.
Yeah.
And I guess they know what they're talking about, but no, you're right. I would say simpler times, but we are talking about World War II,
Right.
which was a rough time. But there's a romanticism of that
Yeah.
where you're talking about writing love letters, and you know, it is something that we've kind of lost today in the social media digital world.
Well, yeah. So fast turn time now, right? You write something, you get a response back right away. Where here you had to wait, you had to savor the moment. Wonder what she's going to write back.
Is she going to write
Is
back?
she going to write back?
Now you can tell when people are texting you back because there's like those little dots.
Yeah, those little dot. Yeah, you're like,
And you're just waiting on that.
or like, oh, I know you read it. Why haven't you responded back yet?
They built their home themselves in Bonnie Lake. Eventually, they moved to Sumner, Washington, where Kenneth worked for Sunoco Products and Iva was a homemaker.
That's so weird. You know, Sunoco Products, when I was a UPS driver, I used to deliver to their big factory all the time. I didn't realize it was such a big company back then. The fact that they had a place all the way out in Washington, too. I just for me, seeing that name, I'm like, oh, yeah.
I remember back in the day wearing my short shorts.
My short short browns. Yeah.
Is that what they called them? Short brown?
No.
I don't think so. They should have, because I dig it. During their 27 years of marriage, each summer, Kenneth and Iva took a road trip, and they would camp somewhere new. They would take an adventure in their van.
That's the way to do it, man. Just pack up your van and go.
During the summer of 1991, Kenneth and Iva were excited to take their vacation trip to Glacier National Park to visit and camp with family and friends. The Cheethams had been to Glacier National a few times, but they visited different parts of it on each visit.
Well, it's a massive park, so you would have to spend, I think you'd have to spend like several months up there to get around to see everything and really take it in.
To see every tree?
To see every tree.
You probably would.
Yeah.
They went to the local Sumner Kmart on July 28th, 1991, to buy some camping supplies before heading out on their summer vacation. They planned to drive through Spokane to Missoula, then up to Glacier National Park. 60-year-old Kenneth and 56-year-old Iva were last seen on July 30th in Clearwater Junction, Montana. It's a town east of Missoula and south of Glacier National Park. They were spotted at the intersection of Highway 83 and Highway 200, where the rest area is located.
It's a spot where a lot of travelers stop and use the restroom and get water and things like that before they start to head up to Glacier National Park.
Well, and it would make sense, right? I don't know what facilities are up there, but you're going to have a little drive, get out, take care of your nature needs and stock up on some Cheez-Its and water, and let's go.
Better to do it there than out in the woods.
Well, that's true.
That's what I'm thinking.
Family called the park rangers because the couple didn't show up to the campgrounds as planned. They had also received a call from friends saying that Kenneth and Iva failed to show up at the friend's home. This was back in Spokane. They were supposed to stop for a planned visit. They were going to stay all night. So Gibbs, obviously, the family was worried enough to call park rangers. But I think everybody at that point kind of assumed, all right, they're okay. Maybe they took another route. Maybe they went sightseeing somewhere, or they just stopped off somewhere along the way, got tired, staying all night somewhere.
It happens.
It does happen.
Yeah.
But, as family, you're still concerned when a member or members of your family have a definite plan to be somewhere with you
Yeah.
at a certain time. So you have to naturally become a little bit concerned. On August 5th, 5 days after the Cheethams were due to meet their family at the campground, deputies from the Missoula County Sheriff's Office discovered their 1969 white and blue Ford van on the side of an abandoned logging road just west of Lake Alva and about 5 miles north of Seeley Lake. Inside the Cheethams van, deputies found Iva's purse, which had been dumped out. And then outside of the van, they found a brand new pair of shoes that Iva had purchased days before in the town of Missoula. Deputies also located the keys to the van about 50 feet away from it. But I think here's the first really, really big question in this case, Gibbs.
Right.
There was no immediate search started until about a week later. So you have to ask the question, why?
Yeah, it's kind of disturbing from my point of view. Now, I don't know if weather played a big part in it or not. I certainly couldn't find anything about that, but I would think some type of search would have occurred. You find her purse dumped out, like someone rummaged through it, and you find a brand new pair of shoes outside the van and the keys nearby, but not right by the van. It seems like something went wrong at that spot.
Yeah, to me, it's not a scene that screams out, oh, everything's okay here.
Yeah.
Or everybody that is involved with this van, the owners, I'm sure they're okay because nothing seems out of the ordinary.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be alarming.
I mean, either way, I think it's a question that has to be asked. I think it's a question that a lot of people who review this case ask and wonder why. Why wait so long? Because it wasn't until Monday, August 12th, that a search for Kenneth and Iva Cheetham was organized. The Missoula County Sheriff's Office and the park rangers performed air searches over difficult terrain, as well as several ground searches. The searches began at the abandoned logging road where the Cheethams' van was found the week before. After days of searching, nothing was located in or around this abandoned logging road. Both the searchers and the family were very discouraged over not finding Kenneth and Iva.
It'd be upsetting, as a friend or family of them, knowing that, one, the search took a week longer than it should have because, that's critical time. We know that. But then the fact that after all this effort with the air searches and the ground searches that they still didn't come away with anything more than they did when they started it.
Yeah, a lot of stuff happens in a week.
Yeah.
That is a long time. So I think you're right. Discouraged about that. But then, okay, the search starts. So there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of optimism. You put all those resources in it, and to come up with nothing, everything has to fall flat.
Yeah.
If you're the family. The searchers continued over the following weeks, adding more emphasis on air searches because of the terrain. It was believed that the air searches would be more beneficial, but nothing was found. No bodies, no leads. Again, had to have been more disappointment for the searchers and families. Some of the Cheethams family from Washington came to the search site on August 29th to help look for Kenneth and Iva. Gibbs, we're almost a month later.
Yeah. From the time that they should have met other family and friends at the campsite, and 3 weeks since the van was discovered.
Yeah. During their visit to help search, the family members told the Great Falls Tribune that the family was satisfied with the efforts law enforcement put into trying to locate their loved ones during their visit. And I get that. It does sound like a lot of effort was made.
Yeah.
A lot of resources were expended when you're talking about air searches and, ground searches and all of that.
Right.
I think I would still harbor quite a bit of resentment that it took a week to get started because, and you mentioned it, you alluded to it.
Yeah.
It's well documented You know, when you're searching for someone, time is of the essence. And the farther you get away in time from the last time that person was seen, I think the harder it is.
Yeah. I think, I read an article back then. They said 72 hours was the critical timeline, right? And I think today it's more like 48 hours, but.
Yeah, 48, 72. I think somewhere in there is, but it's the first part of that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
From 0 to 48, 0 to 72.
Right.
Well, if you're starting a week in, you've blown way past that time.
Right.
And like I said, a lot of things and a lot of bad things can happen in a week. And Gibbs, a lot of things just happen naturally in a week's time.
Yeah.
Weather changes.
Sure it does.
Scavengers. I mean, just you can go down the line of things that can occur during a week's time that would make it so much more difficult for you to locate someone who's missing. After a month of searching, the sheriff came out and told the public at a press conference that he felt that if Kenneth and Iva Cheetham were found, they would be found dead, most likely in a shallow grave or deep in the woods in the heavy brush. He also felt that they were most likely somewhere inside the Swan Valley region. Okay, pretty dark.
Yeah.
I can't say he's wrong because you're a month in at this point.
And if they're in that area, it's very unlikely they would be alive.
Yeah, because they would have walked out, made it to somewhere, called someone, but it's still pretty rough.
Yeah.
And especially rough for the family to hear the sheriff come out and say that, even if Gibbs in the back of their mind, they know it, deep down somewhere, they know this is the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
Has to be rough to hear someone in authority like that say it out loud. Now, he did say they would continue to do random searches, but they were going to have to scale it back.
So they're going to pull resources back.
And that's understandable as well. I mean, you can't do air searches consistently day after day after day.
Right.
You can't use the same amount of resources for an extended period of time. It's just not possible. There's other things to do and there's other people to look for probably.
You're shifting from rescue to recovery. In his mind, the way if he lays this out like he did, he's thinking we're in recovery mode.
Yeah. The sheriff and other law enforcement officials stated at the press conference that a hunter or hunters would most likely find the couple since it was now early hunting season. And the Swan Valley region was a popular hunting spot for locals.
Again, that makes good sense, right? That's probably who's going to recover. If they're there, their bodies will be the hunters.
On Wednesday, September 11th, 1991, a man was hiking the woods up in the mountain with his dog on Clearwater Road, about a mile west of Montana Highway 83. This site was next to Lake Inez and about a mile from the Glacier National Park. While he was on the road, the man's dog jetted off suddenly, went about 250 feet down a dirt path off the road. The dog eventually returned and got the man to follow him back to where he had just come from. The man followed and eventually saw what the dog wanted him to find. 2 partially decaying bodies under the heavy brush. The man contacted the sheriff's department and the park rangers, who both arrived at the scene. The sheriff told the press he believed it was Kenneth and Iva Cheetham's bodies. However, they needed to get confirmation to be sure. He also told the local media that it appeared that foul play was involved.
That'd be tough for the family to hear.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think at a certain point, after so many days go by, at least in the back of your mind, you have to be bracing yourself to find out that something bad has happened. But to hear that foul play was involved,
Yeah.
We're going to be talking murder here, right? That's tough. On top of hearing that they believe they found your loved ones.
Yeah. And how interesting that the sheriff kind of predicted how this would turn out, that they would be found by a hunter, or in this case, somebody walking their dog, but that they would be found underneath heavy brush. I mean, exactly how they were found.
Kind of prophetic.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing that the sheriff said was that searchers had already searched this area back in August. Obviously, they didn't find any bodies when they searched. Now, the question was, did they overlook them?
Right.
Which
could happen.
I'm sure could happen when you're dealing with heavy brush and the type of terrain that we're talking about here.
Right.
Or were the bodies not there at that time and someone brought them to that location sometime after the search?
Which is plausible.
Yeah. I think both are plausible, but the answer to that question is very important.
Yeah, because is that the murder scene or is that just where they dispose the bodies at?
The Cheethams autopsies were initially scheduled for that Friday at the Montana Crime Lab in Missoula, but they got delayed until Saturday because the medical examiner was backed up on a previous case. When the autopsies were performed, the medical examiner determined the victims' identities through dental records and by the glasses found on Iva. The cause of death for Kenneth was a gunshot that went through his chest and exited his back. The medical examiner recorded Iva's cause of death as a single gunshot that went through her head. So pretty brutal for both.
Yeah, one shot each.
And the shots went completely through them.
Powerful.
Also, I think ballistically, it tells you something about both the type of gun that was used, but really probably more about the type of ammunition that was used. You know, I think you and I have talked about it a little bit on other episodes. You know, a lot of times when you're using something like a hollow point bullet that is used for self-defense, that's not likely to go all the way through the body. It's actually not designed to.
Or like a full metal jacket.
A full metal jacket, on the other hand, will often go all the way through. And that's why it's not used for self-defense. You know, if you're trying to save your own life from an attacker, you don't want the bullet to go through that person and then strike an innocent person somewhere behind them.
That makes sense.
And sheriff's investigators did find some shell casings near the Cheetham's bodies. Based on those shell casings, they thought that the murder weapon could be a 9mm handgun.
Well, the problem with that was that location was a pretty popular spot for target shooting. So because of that, the shell casings may not be connected to the murders at all. And because the bullets went completely through the victims and no bullets were located, the investigators could not be certain what caliber bullet killed the Cheethams.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, that goes back to what we were just talking about, right? Let's say a full metal jacket that goes all the way through. If you can't find that bullet, which you would have a hard time doing,
sure,
you gain no knowledge that way. You have nothing to pull out of the victims as you would with, let's say, a different type of bullet. And right away, you would know what type of bullet killed the victims. But in this case, you just don't have it. So you're left to wonder, were the 9mm casings from the bullets used by the killer? Had they been there? Were they, left there from someone target shooting?
Right.
It leaves a lot of open questions. It really does.
I'm sure they would love just to have found 2 casings, and it probably would have been exactly what they wanted, right? 2 shots, 2 casings.
The funeral services for both Kenneth and Iva Cheetham were held on September 21st, 1991. The Missoula County community and the surrounding western Montana forest region communities, they were all stunned by the murders of the Cheethams. Investigators searched for and tracked down dozens of leads. The problem was, and this happens in so many unsolved cases that we cover.
It does.
Those leads, they didn't amount to anything. They searched all the local pawn shops. And after that, investigators released to the press that the couple's Hitachi video camera and camera bag were missing. The bag was a little distinctive because the strap to the bag had the couple's name sewn into it.
Well, you remember those cameras, those Hitachi and RCA, those big cameras that came in those, came in like suitcases, it seemed like. You know, they were pretty good size VHS camcorders.
Yeah, because they used a VHS tape, which was fairly large.
Yeah, pretty big.
So they had to be pretty big.
Yeah.
But so far, to me, Gibbs, that seems like their best clue. Okay.
Yeah.
If somebody took the camera in the bag and tried to pawn it, sell it, whatever, well, we're going to be able to trace it.
Yeah.
Because of the distinctive name on the bag.
Exactly.
One of the leads that investigators do have is that the day after the bodies of the Cheethams were discovered, a local man came forward and told police he found a personalized camera case strap with the name Cheetham engraved into it. He said he found it towards the end of July or early August out on Highway 80. He told investigators he didn't think anything about it until his wife heard about the missing Hitachi video camera and case that the murder victims had in their van. But Gibbs, he only had the strap. So in my mind, right off the bat, I'm thinking, okay, the perpetrator or perpetrators realized we can't take this with this identifiable name on it.
Right. So let's unhook it or whatever and toss it out.
They ditched the strap, but kept the bag and the video camera.
Also, I think it's strange that the guy kept the strap this long. You know, I think it's weird.
A little bit. I think, you know, if you or I were walking along and we found a strap, first of all, do we even pick it up? I don't know. If I pick it up, it's only to come home and throw it in the trash,
right?
To clean it up.
Yeah, not going to save it out in my garage for
a
day. I might need
I'm probably not
strap for something.
But you know, I think this was kind of a blow to police because here I mentioned it. They thought they had this great clue, right? If we find the bag, we find the strap, we find the video camera.
Yeah.
Well, maybe the video camera has something on it.
True. That
helps us solve this case. Well, now it's going to be a hell of a lot harder to find this video camera.
Yeah.
Because it was the strap, most likely, that was the most identifiable thing, you know, between all of them. I don't know if they had the serial number to the video camera or not.
Yeah, and we don't know that, but it would have been nice if the strap was still on the case.
Yeah, because if you go into a pawn shop and say, hey, did you get any Hitachi cameras? Yeah, maybe I got 3 of them in the past month.
Right.
But did you get a strap with the name on it? You're only going to get one of those.
Exactly.
And then that's your big break.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that the community took this pretty hard. I think one of the reasons for that is that they were still recovering from the Riverside Healthcare Center sexual assaults and murders of 87-year-old Nancy Lagerquist and 86-year-old Bertha Scott. It was on the morning of July 1st, 1990. Nursing home resident Nancy Lagerquist was taken from her bed, carried outside, raped, and stabbed to death. And then a month later, police discovered that another resident, Bertha Scott, who had died on May 2nd from apparent natural causes, had actually been raped and strangled. So this is a case with a lot of twists and turns. There are a number of interesting persons of interest. It's probably a case that we'll cover in a future episode, but police don't believe that these 2 murders are connected in any way to the murder of the Cheethams. A year after the Cheethams murders, the investigators were hopeful. They had a person of interest in Florida who was arrested as a suspect in the November 1991 murder of a woman in Key West. This suspect was in Missoula County during the summer months when the Cheethams were murdered. But after investigating this suspect's timelines and alibis, it was determined he was not the Cheethams killer.
Just another bad guy that was in the area, but did bad things down in Florida, I guess, huh?
Yeah. Chose to go down to Florida and do some bad things there.
Yeah.
Now, you telling me he didn't do some bad things in Missoula?
Yeah, well, he just didn't get caught.
On September 30th, 1996, another murder occurred in Missoula County in the same area where the Cheethams' bodies were discovered. But this time, the murder occurred in the individual's mobile home. Teacher Cliff Nelson was shot in the head with a shotgun by an intruder around 2 a.m. that morning. Several neighbors heard the shot, and one called the sheriff's department. A deputy drove through the area and saw Cliff's front door open. And when he walked inside the home, he found Clifford dead on the floor. Investigators also determined that the person who killed Cliff also shot 2 windows out at the local high school up the road from the murder site. The sheriff knew Cliff had taken a handful of students to the movies and dinner on Sunday night for keeping up good grades. Investigators knew the murder weapon was a 12 gauge loaded with birdshot. They looked at both the Cheethams case and Cliff Nelson's case and thought, well, maybe this is the same suspect. But nothing concrete has ever been established to tie the 2 cases together besides the area and the fact that all 3 people were shot to death.
Yeah, that's about the extent of the similarities.
Yeah, because there are some differences, right? We don't know exactly what the Cheethams were killed with caliber-wise, but we know they weren't shot with a 12-gauge shotgun.
Right.
Because that's a much different wound pattern. Not too hard to figure out that someone was shot with a shotgun.
No.
Versus a pistol.
Big difference.
Big difference. But the western Montana region was about to experience more horrific murders. On November 6, 2001, in the town of Florence, which is just about an hour west of the Cheethams murder site, 3 women were murdered in the Hair Gallery Salon in Florence. The women were found by a customer who was arriving for an appointment. The throats of Brenda Patch, Cynthia Paulus, and salon owner Dorothy Harris had all been slashed. These 3 murders occurred in broad daylight during business hours. And again, Gibbs, this is probably a case that, we'll cover in a future episode. The investigators in Missoula County determined these tragic murders were not related to the Cheethams. So basically, the Cheethams case went cold. They had trouble developing, new leads. There really was no momentum in the case. And of course, as happens in any area, more murders occur. And you have to use your resources to help solve them or to try to solve them. The Cheethams case really didn't see any new momentum until 28 years after their murders. This is when 2 cold case experts decided to reopen the unsolved murder cases of Kenneth and Iva Cheetham. Diana Parker and Suzanne Lane, both retired federal investigators, held a press conference on April 11th, 2019. And in the press conference, they told the public they were reopening the cold case of the 1991 killings of the Cheethams. The Missoula County Sheriff told the public at this press conference that Diana Parker, a former FBI agent, and Suzanne Lane, a former agent with Homeland Security, were excellent investigators and have already reviewed the case files and started to interview the family members before the conference was held.
So you got to be somewhat excited if you're friends, family, or just anybody in the community.
Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to see this go unsolved, right? And especially when you're talking about friends and family, they want to see it solved, but they were probably just happy to find out that someone was really working it hard again.
Yeah.
Both investigators were also bringing all the new technology advancements with them to assist in any way possible. It's 2019.
It's going to be a big difference than what it was back in 1991.
In the form of technology, sure. But you also have social media. You had a lot of communication avenues that didn't exist in 1991 that would allow them to get more help from the public.
That's something I think is always overlooked in these cold cases, is how you were so reliant on newspapers back in the day. But now with this social media and the internet, I mean, you could get information out fast to so many different resources.
Well, and let's not forget, there are a lot of people right now interested in true crime.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I know that as well as anyone. There are so many, I'll call them armchair detectives.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that term before. I don't know if it's exactly the right term to use.
Web sleuths, things like that. Yeah.
But there are so many people that are willing to do their own research, willing to help assist in these cases because, frankly, they want to see them solved too.
Yeah. So they'll dig in with their spare time and see what they can come up with.
Sure. The sheriff mentioned in the press conference how investigators did find evidence back in 1991, either on or next to the victims. He felt they could have some strong DNA evidence to test using the latest technology. The sheriff and the new investigators also gave some encouraging news to the public. The sheriff said, "We believe people who are familiar with the circumstances surrounding this case remain in our community. Law enforcement is aware that there is information that has not been shared, and recently investigators have identified persons of interest. It is sometimes the case that people who may have knowledge don't initially come forward because of their relationships to the people involved, concerns for their safety, or they may not realize information they had is important. We recognize that relationships change over time, as do people and their perspectives. It's not too late to come forward."
Wow. And how interesting is that? Because you have said that in many of our unsolved cases, that time changes how people look at this, right? I mean, maybe they were trying to protect somebody, but now that somebody's no longer around or they're no longer in that relationship. So now they can come forward and say, hey, I kind of remember this one guy or this one woman talking about this.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And some of that can only come about with time, right? And the changes in a relationship. The other thing that I think is big is him saying, there are sometimes people who have information, but they don't realize that it may be important. Couple that with us talking about social media.
Right.
So if you're putting out information on social media, let's say there's a Facebook page for a specific case and you're sharing some information. Okay. You're attracting people to that page and maybe it dawns on somebody. Okay. I'm remembering this. Now I'm coupling it with some information. Now it's making sense. I'm connecting the dots where, years ago, it didn't mean anything to me because I had no context for the information that I had. I think that is huge.
It is huge.
Investigators brought up the video camera at the press conference. They said it was a Hitachi VM 5200A. That video camera and case was stolen from the victim's van, either by the killer or killers, or by the individuals who moved the van. If you saw, acquired, or know someone who acquired a Hitachi camcorder in the summer or fall of 1991, we are asking you to contact us. Even though the camera might be gone, the lead is still there. Again, all of this makes a ton of sense. Okay, is there a great chance that this Hitachi video camera that is now 30 plus years old is still around? No, not a great chance. But is there a chance that someone acquired it?
Right.
They remember who they got it from.
Exactly.
And that's the lead that sparks investigators on to the next piece of the puzzle. I do think that could be huge.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember, you bought it from John Doe, and they're like, well, let's go talk to John Doe and see where John Doe got it from.
Yeah.
right? Maybe John Doe's the one that got it from the killer, or maybe John Doe is the killer.
Sometimes you just need the first piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you connect the dots from there. I always think a lot of the problem that investigators have in some of these unsolved cases is they just can never get the start
Right.
that they need that leads them to the path. They don't even know where the path is.
No, they just need
where it starts.
some type of kickstart.
Yeah. Diana Parker and Suzanne Lane are working with the Montana State Crime Lab, the FBI, and the ATF to assist with any old and new leads, including DNA. Anyone with information regarding the van, the camcorder, or the deaths of the Cheethams is asked to contact the Missoula County Sheriff's Office on Facebook, Twitter, or their tip line at 406-258-3302. So, Gibbs, we actually mentioned a number of cases in this episode. A couple of the cases we'll probably cover.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Sometime down the road. As far as the case on the murder of teacher Cliff Nelson, the sheriff made an arrest and an individual was convicted, but that conviction was later overturned.
So technically, including the Cheethams murder, that's 4 separate cases that are unsolved in that area.
So as we wrap up this case, I think there's a lot of mystery here. And there is anytime you have an unsolved murder. But here we have a couple in their 50s, 60s. They're going out to meet family. They don't make it. They get pretty close. Obviously, the biggest overriding mystery is who killed them.
Right.
But then, I think you have, as part of that mystery, what happened along the way? How did they come to meet this individual? Why did they stop the van? Because somebody on the side of the road needed help. They were going to be good Samaritans and they encountered a very bad person.
Yeah. At what point? You're right. Did they meet him at the rest area? Did they meet him along the way?
Yeah. I think when you go back to the rest area, and we've had cases like this before, did they meet someone or did somebody just spot them, target them?
Sure.
And then you can maybe force them off the road somewhere away from the rest area.
Yeah.
Or, pulled up beside them and said, hey, your tire's flat, yelling out the window. You can come up with a myriad of scenarios
Really can.
where a couple who is probably pretty trusting of people, I'll say that. I don't know that for sure, but I think you can see where a couple like this could think that they're helping someone in need.
Sure.
And the act of them stopping for whatever reason put them in harm's way. That's a very plausible scenario. It could have happened, gosh, who knows how many different ways.
Oh, and we're never going to know, really, unless these 2 new investigators are able to turn up some new leads, either with DNA or someone comes forward and finally get some answers.
Yeah, we're never going to know unless the killer or killers tell us what happened.
Right.
Because there's going to be no way else to figure it out. Well, I'll take that back. Somebody that they told could help shed light on it as well.
True.
If they decide to come forward. But I think the bottom line is someone's going to have to come forward and fill in the details because there's no other way to figure it out. But that's it for the case of the unsolved Cheetham murders. Got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hello, Mike and Gibby. I am terrible at leaving voicemails, but hey, here I go. Thank you so much for all you do and the effort you put into your podcast. I am a longtime listener. All the effort you do does not go unnoticed to me. I love everything that you guys put out. I've listened to every episode so far, and I'm sad to say that I'm all caught up. But if I could make a suggestion, it is the case of the G family murders that took place back here in 2009 in Beeson, Illinois. Sadly, it's featured on the ID channel on the show Murder Comes to Town. I believe the episode to be called The Devil Wears Sneakers. But speculation to this day still results around those events. Some people believe that the right people were caught. Some people believe that they weren't. But I think that it's a good case for you guys to look into. And yeah, thank you for all that you do, and keep your own time ticking.
All right. We'll definitely check that out. I got a huge kick out of her because she ended up having to leave 4 different voicemails, I think.
Oh, did she really?
Because her kids were kind of doing stuff in the background. So she would get so far into the voicemail and then be like, and then hang up because the kids were getting rowdy or doing whatever they were doing.
So she finally got this one through.
Yeah, she got this one through. You could still hear them in the background.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny that it took her a few attempts to get it all out.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Hanna. I am a listener from a very small town in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. I just found your guys' podcast in 2020 as the pandemic hit, like I've heard a lot of people did. And I've been hooked. I just recently became a Patreon supporter because I ran through every single episode there was in True Crime All the Time and also True Crime All the Time So I had to. And I'm so glad that I did. I just watched a few live videos of you and Gibby, and oh my goodness, I do not know how you guys don't laugh constantly. Y'all are funny when you're talking, but your mannerisms and everything is just hilarious. I love it. But I'm also glad that I became a Patreon supporter because I always thought you were rather mean, Mike, to Gibby. So I'm glad to see all the cues and the nonverbal stuff that I was missing because I feel like there's a lot more joking going on. But I always thought, dang, he's so mean to poor Gibby. What's going on here? But I'm really glad to be a listener. I love you both. I love the podcast. I've tried other true crime podcasts and nothing compares for me. So keep doing the good work and keep your own time ticking.
Oh, that's awesome. Amazing. And Gibbs, she touched on something that I hear a lot, people saying, oh, why are you so mean to Gibby and this and that. And, a lot of people, there's just no way to understand the dynamic that you and I have. And it is a little different when we're not doing the podcast. I've said that before.
Oh, sure you have. Yeah.
You play the meek, mild-mannered Superman on the podcast. You're a lot different. No, I shouldn't say a lot, but you're different off the podcast. I think you miss something only hearing the audio.
Sure. When
you watch the videos that we do, you can kind of see how we're joking around, but it's not coming through the voice. We're doing it with our eyes or our hand motions or whatever. But
yeah, we're definitely know each other well enough that we joke a lot, and it might come across. If you don't know that, it might come across like that at first. But if you know us,
the problem remains that you won't joke back on the podcast the way that you do in real life because you want to keep this, oh, poor Gibby.
Poor Gibby.
I know for a fact that's what it is.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. It's Dispatcher Lisa, and I'm sorry I couldn't let this go. It's Zion, Illinois, not Zion, Illinois. Sorry. I just had to tell you that. Happy 2021. Hope things go better this year than last. Oh, yeah. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Oh, we love Lisa. Did you hear a difference, though?
I don't know.
I don't know if I did either.
She's
Zion?
What's the difference between that and the way I say Illinois?
Well, she knows that's not right. Everybody knows that's not right. Zion?
I don't know.
Zion. I'll have to listen to it again. I'm not sure I heard the big difference. All right, buddy, it's time for us to get out. That is another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.